Welcome to the HR Locker podcast. On today's show, we have the incredible Sherisa Rajah. Sherisa is Director of Global Employment, Law and Compliance for Expandopedia, an organisation that specialises in supporting companies with their global expansion strategies. Today, we talk about how COVID-19 has brought about a global digital transformation and how this huge shift to remote work has opened up a world of new opportunities. We asked Sherisa just exactly how difficult is it to expand our workforces into different countries, and what are the issues and implications companies will have to contend with. She tells us how organisations must make sure that health and safety, workplace morale and wellness must become a priority for HR departments, no matter where your team is located. Our host today is Christelle Rinn, Chief Marketing Officer at HR Locker, and she asked Sherisa about the role HR must play in the company structure. Because at the end of the day, maintaining that human connection is what keeps the workplace strong and helps your employees to thrive.
Welcome to today's podcast. Today we have Sherisa with us. She's coming from Expandopedia. So we're delighted to have you with us today, Sherisa. Can you give me a bit of information on your background and your company and your areas of expertise?
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. So my background, I am an international employment lawyer. I have been in practice at international law firms for about 16 years before joining Expandopedia. I've had a fair amount of experience in international employment law, employee relations, collective bargaining, and workplace council disputes. At Expandopedia, I have a team of about 9 lawyers. We are region-specific lawyers, and ultimately we handle the Ask the Expert functionality. So we support our clients in their global compliance, global expansion, and just cradle-to-grave employment law and employee relations issues as they arise during the lifetime of the employment relationship. And we are I stand to be corrected, 151 plus countries. So coupled with the directory, you get the Ask the Expert service, which is where my team come in and play a role.
Perfect. So Sherisa, digital transformation has been, I suppose, one of the main subjects for the last 12 months. Coupled with COVID-19, some companies have seen great growth, and some companies, unfortunately, have been adversely affected. I think one of the areas that we're seeing a lot with our companies at the moment is that the growth that they're experiencing in terms of hiring employees and growing their workforce isn't necessarily always in their home country where the company is based. And a lot of that, expanding of a workforce has now gone into an international market. So certainly hiring remotely is a challenge for companies, I think. But what do you think would be some of the main things that people should be aware of when they're recruiting internationally, right from the stage of advertising their jobs to interviewing, to bring them on board, which is a bit of a minefield. I know it's kind of $1 million question.
I wanted to start by saying, how much time do I have?
We're good for a while.
Right. So, I think the starting point is that the digital transformation through COVID has just led to an explosion of remote work, gig work, and just augmented workplaces. Now, if you think about the workplace pre-COVID, that workplace was more traditionally aligned with what HR and employment law standards consider to be typical. You had an office, you could work at home 1 or 2 days a week as long as you consulted with your manager, but operationally we have the right to claw that back and call you into an office. COVID has made it operationally necessary for companies to survive, to generate revenue, to be able to go remote overnight. That's the net effect of COVID. And you see it coming out in the workplace guidelines across the globe that where employees can work remotely, they must. What that now means is companies have to expand and grow, etc. And as that happens, people have been onboarded and started working remotely in new companies and those good things. The employer has a conundrum. On the one hand, you need to start with when you hire someone into a job that is going to be remote right now, your first prerogative needs to be health and safety, because those obligations are peremptory on an employer. The employer must provide healthy and safe working conditions for the employee. Now, if these people are being onboarded and they're working remotely or in another part of the world where you don't have an office, etc., are you doing a health and safety inspection? Are you checking the person's desk, the person's lighting, the person's posture, those good things? Following from that is the whole thing around tax mobility. If someone is working in one country for you, are you paying the right taxes over to Social Security? Is the person participating and enjoying the contributions that by operation of law the employer is obliged to pay over for that person? And these are kind of the compliance elements of recruiting globally and remotely, where you don't have an office or a payroll per se in that country, that an employer must think about. The two big things that stand out for me are Social Security / tax, health and safety, and a huge thing around health and safety, an expansion of that has been wellness and workplace morale in a distributed workplace. But I think ultimately the employer has a number of other concerns and considerations, but those would be the key things you really need to prioritize right now.
I think you touched on something there that I think for the next 12 months is going to be really prevalent, is the health and safety aspect, because in the last 12 months remote working has been forced upon companies. Some companies are going to continue it, other companies are going to do that dual working aspect, other companies are going to get rid of it. I don't think remote working is going away anytime soon. But one of the things that I think a lot of companies didn't consider is that health and safety aspect, that where are your people working from? Are they ergonomically correct? Are they working on their kitchen table? Or if it's going to be a permanent thing, you need to put a plan in place.
Exactly the point. I mean, we had, I represented clients when I was back in practice where when the lockdown happened, they sent desks home, they got trucks to deliver desks, monitors, chairs, so that people, regardless of what space they were in, they could make the space comfortable for themselves. In the South African climate, back then, there was still rolling blackouts, or as we call them, load shedding, and the issue was, well, what do we do in supporting employees working from home in circumstances where they have no electricity?
Absolutely.
And
how do you get over that? It's kind of a bit of a mountain.
The solution we had was to find a shared office space where they could have social distancing with screens and those good things up, that people could still come in on a rotational basis to be able to generate an income. And I think the conversation, regardless of whether it's an emerging market or more sophisticated economy, remains global in its themes, that you need to consider that there's no one script that's going to fit every single workplace, because what you're doing right now is the building blocks for the future of work. We called this the 4IR revolution in Feb. We were still having the conversations about the 4IR workplace. And we said, it's a revolution. In a revolution, there's technology. It will augment, it'll create redundancies. But right now, what you're seeing is that everybody has a role to play. Everybody can more or less be upskilled. Everybody can diversify and contribute to the bottom line. But how you do that in every single workplace, every single role, from the manager being taught to remote supervise and manage, the employee being taught to execute in that manner, to salespeople being taught to generate sales without a handshake. We know it's possible, but we're human. We're social beings. We want to connect. And I think through all of this, we need to remember that the human connection is what keeps workplace morale going. And as long as there's workplace morale, you've got a strong employee value proposition to retain good skills, to attract good skills, and your succession for your business is strong and healthy and viable, regardless of what lockdown comes, et cetera, et cetera. But it all starts with that dialogue, that conversation, that prioritizing employee wellness and creating that EVP that is sustainable through this.
I think that's the key, is that regardless of lockdown, this new way of working isn't going to go away. So, the time for being just reactionary is gone. Now it's forward thinking and forward looking, and how can we put the things in place to move forward and make this a viable option for people. which is the key.
I love what you just said about the whole reactionary process, because HR and employment lawyers have historically been the last ones to come to the table. We align with the commercial strategy, with the M&A strategy, with the decisions made. But right now, you realize that leadership realizes that the future of work is its people. And if we accept that, HR and employment lawyers need to be leading this conversation based on these things we're talking about now. It's a proactive approach, prioritizing people.
Exactly. And I mean, a bit of a hobby horse of mine is, forget about the clocking in from 9 to 5:30. That day is almost gone, I'm hoping, and that it's productivity, it's the outcome, it's what actually people are producing at the end of the day, whether they're in the office or remotely or in another country. That's the measure in an ideal world. So my business is scaling. Decided to, open a new office in maybe South America or Australia. I've done all my interviews, selected my candidates. Fantastic. Now I have this global remote workforce. And I'm looking at them going, okay, so what do I do with these people? So can you tell me the challenges that you see when you're managing that global remote workforce? So it's that kind of group of, it's a pot of different cultures, time zones, even different education, but ultimately we want a productive workforce. So what do you think are the main challenges of operating in different countries, and how do we get around those? Because I mean, so many companies are successful doing it,
I think it's having a distributed workplace is the most effective way to embrace diversity and inclusion, and to create a relevant workplace that attracts the right talent, particularly at Gen Z. We're not talking millennials, talking Gen Zs, these bright people that can disrupt the business, take you from brick and mortar into this digitally augmented workplace that we all understand in our minds but don't know in our hearts how to implement block by block. But the challenges are definitely there. The first thing is, as you say, the time zones. I mean, I can tell you, we've got in my employment law team, we've got people sitting in LATAM and Canada and the US. That team meets with me in the evening. Like I have a 5 p.m. team meeting with them, but APAC and South Africa can meet with me in the morning. And the risk in that becomes, when do the team as a whole ever meet one another all together? Yeah. The other thing is, you talked about cultural differences. Never before have we been more aware of our onus to embrace diversity and inclusion, and never before have we lived in a more racially and socially divided, I want to say, society. Courts have pronounced on this, that we live in, the words that the Labour Court used in a judgment not too long ago was, we live in a racially charged society. The problem with that is sometimes cultural jokes might not be a shared experience. And you really have to instill a culture of respect and tolerance, because, and that goes back to workplace morale and having the conversations and making people feel safe and in a trusted environment. Because if you don't get that conversation right, then perceptions and subjective realities can really divide up a workplace.
And you're on the back foot straight away. It's if you don't have that cultural element straight, not as in that your company culture. If you don't have that element of that respect straight away, it's an uphill battle.
Absolutely. And then coming to the employment or employee relations aspect of it is, managers have to understand and be more cognizant that the employment relationship is ultimately hinged on an employment relationship of trust. If you don't trust me, how on God's green earth do you expect that we have a continued relationship? It's intolerable from inception, because you don't trust me to do my job. That means that if I say I'm going to log on and I'm working, there shouldn't be these checks and balances where you want to police people, where you want to adopt this clock watcher mentality or attitude. Team meetings and checking if the light is green, etc. You really need to measure, like you said earlier, output and reward for output as opposed to hours, because someone could sit at their laptop from 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 10 p.m. and be entirely ineffective and unproductive. We really need to shift the mindset around that, because that kind of clock watcher mentality will make employees feel scared and will impact adversely so their productivity when they are available to you. But the biggest benefit of a remote workplace is you're trading flexibility for availability. That means that if you're distributed, it doesn't matter what time zone you sit in, etc., but you've built so much goodwill that someone would log on at 10 p.m. and give you X, Y, and Z, because ultimately, it's give and take, and in aggregate, we all win. And I think we have to train managers to manage in this way, and we have to train leaderships across sectors and industries to lead companies with this sort of mindset of agile or agility in their thinking and agile working.
Yeah, I'm nodding feverishly here because so glad it's not recorded on video. But two things which I think is so important is that you've got to trust your people if they're working from home or remotely. You just have to, or else it's just not going to work. If you are a manager or a company who, you're checking up on people, exactly like I said, is that green light on? Where are they? It turned orange. Where did they go? It's just not going to work.
Yep.
It's silly. It's really, really just not going to work. And then the other thing, so we're going through this thing at the moment, the right to disconnect. And I was talking to Derek the other day from Adair HR, and he was saying something that's really stuck with me is that, yes, the onus is on the employer to make sure that the employee disconnects and has the right to disconnect. But the onus is also on the employee to make sure that they operate, that they can disconnect. Because, yes, remote working gives a massive amount of flexibility, and it's great when you can say, let's have a call at 10 o'clock and everybody's on board. And the onus is really on both the employer and the employee to make sure that there is that disconnect then at the end of the day, because that's what remote working brings, is the flexibility to disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I couldn't say it better. That's exactly it. I mean, Ireland's right to disconnect is no different to Macron's reforms in 2016 around the working week, the working hours that an employee should allocate in a week to his or her job, etc. And, there's so much I could say about this. The thing around remote working, the reason I became fascinated as an employment lawyer with this area of work and grey space in our law is because we keep talking about inclusion and diversity. We keep talking about embracing, this workplace, etc. But as a working mom, I always felt that, I've always had to prove my worth twice over to my male colleague because, I have a womb and I have kids and, I've always had to juggle it. And the expectation is, Sherisa wouldn't be able to do this or do that because, she's a mom and she's got kids. And ultimately, I'm privileged, and many working moms must recognize their privilege in that if you've had the opportunity to juggle it, to be in workplaces with whether they're law firms or whatever that allow you the ability to have both a career and be a parent, and I say parent as a gender neutral term intentionally, then wow, how lucky are you? But so many women do not have the opportunity to do that, to enjoy motherhood and still earn a living and have their economic freedom and power. And that kind of lack of collective bargaining plays out in gender-based violence, in the lack of women's rights in a nation as a whole. It ultimately feeds in from the workplace into the sectors, into the industry, and then ultimately, and this kind of thing really empowers people. If you think about the number of women who would be able to take up employment if I could work around my kids and wouldn't have to give it up to nurse my child, etc., then you really are creating an environment that is acceptable and capable of participation by men and women alike. The same can be said for all kinds of other biases and norms. You're creating an inclusive society for people to take work, and work can, in this kind of environment, you could have work, which is like gig work or augmented work, And you could have employment. These are very different. Like someone could have a side hustle and that could be his or her work. And then there could be employment, which is a distinct concept, etc. in law. But you are allowing economies to participate in these things and derive income and benefit for their people cross-border. I mean, this creates a whole different footprint. But we must do so responsibly. We must not do it in a way that's exploitative to employees' rights and to employers' managerial prerogatives. And it's a give and take situation.
Exactly. And that is, I think it's definitely the key. And I think it's a danger if we're not aware of that exploitation, in that this global workforce is not going away. It's here to stay. It's definitely going to be a huge thing in the next 12 to 24 months, I really feel. But it does come with a cost, in that it can't be it can't be mean that people can exploit somebody if just because I'm hiring them from a third world economy, that I pay them a third of what I'm paying somewhere else.
Yeah.
You need to be able to look at it as a whole. But absolutely, and I would really agree with you in terms of, I think that remote working has kind of somewhat leveled the playing field, not totally level, it's leveling the playing field for that working mother. Because if I got to go collect my children at 3:00 for 5 minutes, it's now acceptable. I can do that and still work, a full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
It's not disruptive because my productivity is still high. And I do think that if we can just understand how we can embrace flexible working and embrace that that diverse culture, what we can learn from other people, other cultures, other ways of working, I think it'll be a good workplace of the future, to steal a phrase.
Absolutely. I think, and we've heard all these catchphrases about the new normal and all these little sayings that come about, and that you should be using the time and exploiting the time and etc. And I mean, let's be honest. Ultimately, between homeschooling the kids, keeping a house, and trying to hold down your career, not shove it down the toilet in the insanity of everything that's now on your shoulders, ultimately people are stressed. Even if they give 20 hours to their job, they worry that tomorrow there could be a headcount cull, and what if I'm the part of the employee liability that gets culled? And I think that this new normal, it tells us a couple things. One is that employers can go remote. Two is managers can remote manage one of their teams. And three is that the company sees that I can be productive rather than throw my time into commuting into London if I really needed to. And you benefit more from getting more of my time. But people as a whole have never worked to work. They work to live, Someone, the founder of One Circle HR said that no one works to work. They work so that they can live meaningful and balanced lives. And I think that people have gone into the lockdown realizing that, it's horrible. No one wants to be, stuck in the four walls of their houses all day long and mask up and not be able to, embrace people and see your family, etc. But you've never before been so grateful for your health, for your safety, and for the wellness of your immediate family or next of kin. So people are not going to come out of this and be like, yeah, man, I want to take a 2-hour train to Waterloo. Put me there first. I'm going to say, no, I can do this at home. And then I'll go pick up the kids and I'll cook dinner and then I'll get back onto my computer. It's all good. This is very achievable. And employers are going to have to embrace the juggling act of creating a hybrid workplace, because operationally there is no business case to call these people back into an office for 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. shifts.
Yeah. And I think you touched on this earlier, Sherisa, is that I do think that this is the advent for the HR managers and the HR directors and the HR sector to be able to say this is their time to shine. Really, is that people? We have a diverse workforce. You still need to maintain culture. You still need to maintain that connection, and that is the HR function at the moment, is to maintain that connection between people.
To maintain connection, balance the employer's rights to productivity, but to put people at the forefront of the strategy, because the better, the more benefit you confer to these people, they will give you 110%, because human nature is such that they will appreciate this as a gesture rather than their rights, because they remember what the old workplace looked like. So if you wanted to attract that skill or retain that skill, what you do through and beyond COVID will determine how you get your succession plan and how you retain your existing skill and attract better skill for the future.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the questions that I'm going to throw at you is about the future of work, but I'm going to preempt that with a preamble that if I was to ask you 12 months ago, what was the future of work, what would you still have the same answer as you would today?
No, I wouldn't, because I sold future of work solutions as part of my employment law practice, and the pushback I got was that this is too forward thinking. This is 10 years time. This is not happening now. We need checks and balances. We need platforms we need timesheets.
Yeah.
So
it was digitizing. I would have said 12 months ago, it was like digitizing everything. That's the future of work, is AI and digitizing.
Yeah.
That would have been my answer 12 months ago.
I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, the augmentation of the workplace would have very quickly created a lot more redundancies. I think we saw a lot of redundancies now between March to now, but for different reasons. And I think that there's ebbs and flows, and the market will resume and jobs will become available again as the market opens up again. But I'm awestruck by the global experience of the workplace. That there are nuances and there are dynamics relevant to each jurisdiction, depending on the economy's market power, its ability to trade and sustain. However, the themes, the conversations are global. It's about supervision and control. It's about expectations to continued remote working. It's also about the fact that, ultimately people were taught that the biggest or the best advertising they would get would be their big fancy buildings in the heart of, I don't know, London, Sandton City, Johannesburg, whatever. Now, in doing this, a company is going to have to relook and say, okay, well, how do I renegotiate my lease or exit my lease without facing huge penalties, and repurpose that money to augment my workplace? Because when COVID started and the lockdowns were handed down in March, the issue was, golly, I don't know if my VPN can endure this kind of traffic. Not everybody has laptops. So these have been all the conversations. Is this future of work? No, I think that this is emergency remote work. I think emergency remote work is what we find ourselves in, that's necessary for companies to survive. I think that the augmentation and the digitization has to still come. There has to be better ways to connect with people other than Teams meetings or Zoom calls, or we have to find better ways, and we have to bring a humanity into it. Like if you think about LinkedIn, people talk about Zoom fatigue. I have LinkedIn fatigue. I don't want to read stories like, I have been asked to speak at, or, I've just been published. It's like, the other day I put a picture of my kids in my backyard playing in the snow, and I'm like, here's a human element to this whole work from home thing. This is what this looks like to me, because we just need to find ways to connect. And the digital revolution has to still come. We haven't avoided it. It's necessary because it's necessary for us to find better ways to be efficient, to streamline what we're doing, and to find a way to have one conversation. Like if you think about a company, a service company, there's the sales, there's the HR, there's the legal, there's the business, there's the leadership, there's the strategy team, the policy team. I don't know, I'm making up things now. But ultimately, right, like in any kind of big transaction, if I think about a law firm, you need your tax lawyer, your employment lawyer, your commercial lawyer, your M&A guy. We need to find ways to have one conversation with those people, and then they spillage off, and then their teams go and do the work, and then they come back together. And we have to remember how important it is to be aligned, and we need to find better ways to streamline so we achieve alignment and improve our productivity whilst remote working. If anyone is committed to making this work, then that's the one area that I see so lacking, is the lack of having one conversation and achieving alignment in big rollouts and things you're doing in the ordinary course that would be a big revenue generator for a business, by example.
Yeah, because I do think that what we're in at the moment is this emergency reaction, in that, we've survived almost a year now, and people are thinking, yeah, this remote working thing isn't so bad. It's okay. I might do 1 or 2 days a week going forward, or maybe 2 or 3 days. And but I think the main difference is that most people have already had that connection with the people they work with because they already were working with them. So they have had that rapport. They've met with them several times. They've gone for coffee. They've gone for lunch. So they have they have that rapport.
Mm.
But what happens when now a company is doing better? Now I'm onboarding lots of new people. I'm onboarding lots of new people remotely, and I need to get those people in my company culture, and I need to get those people to have a rapport, and I need to get those people to actually have that kind of people connection. And I think companies are going to struggle with that. But I think if we want this new future of work to work, then
I
we
mean,
really need to consider that.
my entire
Yeah.
legal team was onboarded remotely. I've never met anyone I currently work with in person. I left practice in May. I was onboarded in a lockdown in South Africa. I emigrated. I carried on working, grew the team all remotely, under the guidance and leadership of my general counsel in my team. And she recruited all of us. She set us up. We have the two team meetings, early morning and then late afternoon once a week. And we, I mean, it's something so simple. Like we just have to make time to talk to each other.
We do.
You have the WhatsApp group, we laugh, we engage, we fight, we disagree,
Mm.
but also there's so many lines. I've been reading books on people and behavior and change analytics, and I find it really interesting because as an employment lawyer, I saw this as a space where we need laws, but we need laws going back to the exploitation, and there needs to be checks and balances.
Mm-hmm.
But from an HR perspective, putting my employee relations hat on, the concern is around the fact that if people don't feel connected, that's where it leads to division and toxicity and
Mm-hmm.
this need to want to, it's a scarcity mentality. Oh God, I'm so nervous. I'm so anxious. Is this okay? Is my job okay? Does my manager like me? Then you start undercutting your colleagues. You start showing people up. You stop working
Mm-hmm.
as a team. You lose your synergy and your passion and appetite for collaboration because now it's about me and it's survival around me. And that's why the HR value proposition and the wellness and the togetherness approach, the alignment, is so critical on a granular level, on a day-to-day level, to making this whole thing work. It's never before been more necessary for people to talk together and work together.
Yeah, I definitely think that, and I am repeating myself to say that I think at this stage we're in this emergency thing. We need to stop being in that emergency reactive remote working. This is here to stay. What are your policies going forward? How are you going to get that engagement? How are you going to, it's more than just doing online yoga with your team. We're sick of that. So,
right? What's the other one? Virtual drinks on a Thursday? Like bring your cocktail to work day. It's like, okay, no, it's not what it is about either.
We're over that.
Right? Yeah. It's really got to be meaningful. I mean, things like KPIs, those traditional 12-page contracts of employment, my warranties, my duties, my KPIs, those have been turned on their head. Find more agile ways of working. Agility impacts that written document. Your flexible working policy, there's no flexible working policy. I work flexibly. In return, you have my availability. 100% subject to reason and the law. All these things, these change management policies need to be considered from a practical eye. And I mean, God, the idea that a workplace of 50 people have 50 policies, definitely not. Like, stop with the paperwork and focus on the people.
Yes, exactly. Focus on the people because most people are normal.
I mean, we hope. Yeah, I think
we
so.
hope so. They get around. And then my final question, Sherisa, is where do you think AI sits in all of this? Is that the future of work?
I think AI and future of work are concepts around necessity in the workplace, but I think the AI talks to how we work rather than the workplace strategy. Yeah, it's the how, it's the using platforms and technology to streamline how we work. And I think it's become this vilified monster because it's ultimately
taking my job. It's taking our jobs. That's it.
I saw someone post on LinkedIn once that there were two videos, one of a gentleman building a wall with the plaster and the laying thing, and then a robot like doing it, jush, jush, jush. And then it's like, this is the future of work. It's like nobody.
Make it stop.
Yeah, and it got like over 1,000 likes on LinkedIn. I was like, wow, who posted this, And then you read the comments like, yeah, people are struggling. This is terrible. Rest of us need work too. We have families and mouths to feed. It's like, but you can have both. AI must streamline. It's necessary because it allows us to be better aligned. At the end of the day, will it cull jobs? Yes, because this still becomes the fourth industrial revolution. And maybe we've passed that tag now, but this is a revolution around work. And in any revolution, there is an adverse impact on people. But responsibly then, laws and governments and employers and regulators, all together or all individually, however they do it, should then find ways to upskill employees so that we mitigate against the large numbers of job loss. That will still come. This is all coming. So, it's exacerbated by COVID, but it's still coming. And ultimately, if we can responsibly upskill people and we incentivize employers to do so, and governments and regulators put their heads together and find ways to build a strategy for upskilling people, we can mitigate against that.
Yeah. And I think just really the future for work is focusing on the person, and that which seems like completely, the opposite to AI, but I think it gives us the opportunity to focus on the person. We take a lot of that work away from them, or that a lot of mundane work and streamlining things. It gives us the opportunity to actually concentrate on the person. Thank you so much, Sherisa. That was really informative. I really enjoyed it. Can I ask, if people want to get in contact with you or Expandopedia, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's Sherisa Rajah, Rajah Rajah. It's not French, so it's Rajah. I'm very active on my LinkedIn, and Expandopedia has the website www.expandopedia.com. All our details are there. Our leadership team details are there. We'd love to know more about how we could support your global compliance, your policies in the workplace, your rehashing them, you're revisiting them. These are exciting times for HR people and employment lawyers. We got a chair at the table now, and it's not going to go away for a while. So we're here to take them. Yeah.
Well, that's a great place to stop. So thank you so much, Sherisa.
Thanks for listening. Check us out at hrlocker.com. This show was hosted by Christelle Rinn and produced by Jenny Martin. Subscribe to catch the latest episodes on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you like to get your podcasts. If you'd like to feature, get in touch by emailing us at marketing@hrlocker.com. You can also follow HR Locker on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn.